Okay.
I could get into my bad though.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, it's one guy, and I feel like this is happening with some of the older guys that I don't know if I want to say overvalue themselves or what, but it definitely feels like f0rest has just sat on the bench for way too long at this point, or not the bench, but just kind of sat in free agency for way too long at this point. It was brought to my attention by the recent article where Mira talked about your interview with him, Thorin, where it was just about how f0rest doesn't seem like he has any opportunities that are coming his way. And it kind of just really just reminded me that, oh yeah, this guy didn't play any professional CS.
Oh, for ages. Yeah, years and years at this point, right?
In 2023, mid 2022 is when he stopped playing seriously. And he's since played a couple show matches. He's played, he plays it as a stand-in for Fnatic, actually. And actually, for Complexity, he was weirdly their sixth man for the last major. I don't know why that was a thing. It felt like more of a PR thing personally, but I also maybe think it was just like Jason Lake would probably just like, hey, f0rest, wouldn't it be cool to like get us our sixth man? Like,
no, here's the thing though, that would have been fucking dope though if randomly a player had got an ill. Like, you know, Floppy just has like the flu or something. And they're like, oh my god, f0rest, like even if it was shit, like it's like when Symbol came to f0rest. I'm in for the ride though. Like, let me see it. Let me see it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I would have wanted to watch it, you know, like, and that's kind of the whole thing right now. It's just that, like, I don't know. It seems like a combination of different ideas where it's like I don't know if f0rest didn't like. When I read the quotes from Mira's transcription of what you've had with him, I feel like there's like f0rest not wanting to take a step down. Like, it didn't really seem like he wanted to play with an eyeballers type team. It almost felt like he also was considering a possibility of a coach pivot, but. Like, by and large, I don't really care where f0rest plays, but I want to see him play. Like, I want to see him, like, he cares where he plays. Like, it seems like he wanted that, like that phase deal, because I bet you if I was someone like f0rest, it was like, hey, like, you know, Adren and Coldzera got deals with, and Neo got a deal with FaZe. Like, surely I could get a deal with FaZe or whatever. But I think that was just poor GMing on FaZe's part, which was probably because Nico was having such a huge hand in like trying to find that replacement for Kerrigan. And I feel like f0rest now just kind of dug himself into a hole, even unknowingly, because whereas people were just kind of throwing money around sort of just randomly, I guess, like in 2022, in 2021, I just don't feel like that's the case anymore. You probably even experienced that a little bit with Dignitas, if I'm being honest. Like, Dignitas just kind of threw money at those players when I don't really think that they ever had truly high levels of competition in terms of aspirations. Like, they kind of knew they were all in the twilight years of their career, and f0rest, I don't think that he necessarily needed to be in the twilight years of his career. I feel like he could have been one of those people that actually showed us that there is a longer shelf life for professional players than we might even have believed. But because he sat down for so long and didn't choose a team, like that's kind of put the nail in the coffin for me. I don't think that you're coming back from now it has been 2 years of no competitive play. I don't think you're really coming back from 2 years of no competitive play. And I'd love to be proven wrong. Like, let me say that too. Like, I would love for f0rest to come back onto an eyeballers or a better team, and for him to actually show that he can put up some kind of like reasonable contributions in that sort of environment, like a 1 point. If someone that's like taken 2 years off from the game puts up a 1.10 for a whole calendar year, I will be shocked. Like, I will be personally so surprised, because I think finding that sort of motivation once again when you've already accomplished everything that there is to accomplish is just so difficult. And you probably your life's interests have completely aligned like in different directions. Like, you know, he does a little bit of streaming, probably has a pretty fulfilling home and family life and you know, friend life and everything like that. And so just like diving deep back into the game is so difficult, because also at that time, like if you're like in your mid 30s approaching 40 or whatever, I feel like a lot of people around you have like settled into this routine, this habit, and you've probably created your own. And that's kind of, I think that's like, it's sort of this is a little bit of a tangent, but just kind of that whole age discussion with players. I don't think we've seen the limits of where pro players can take it, but I do think that if they take a long enough break, it's over.
Yeah, f0rest needed to continue playing, like Maui said. Like, no one is going to take a chance, I feel like, on... Is he 36?
I might not be quite that old. I would guess like 33 or 34.
Yeah, 36. No, he's 36.
Oh, he is 36? Wow.
Yeah.
By the way, that just shows how long it's been. I probably just looked at the thing 2 years ago.
Yeah, so he needed to keep playing to prove himself. And the age description with, you know, players playing longer now, I think that's going to be a thing. But right now we're seeing it with IGLs. So Kerrigan, Snappy, and we haven't seen it with like star like riflers or like big operas, but in the late 20s we have like with Device. I can't think of any other names right now, but like Maui made a good point. Like Forrest he shouldn't have taken that break. He needed to keep proving himself by playing at his age.
No, I'll actually pick up on what you said at the end there. I do think that was the mistake he made, is actually he himself tried a JKS move, but the problem he had was, and this will sound like a crazy thing to say out loud, but it's true. You aren't even JKS, mate. I know that sounds mental because you're f0rest, but you're f0rest in the sense of if people look at the bigger picture of history of CS, if people look today, that's where actually I think CS changed forever after the old online era we had where everyone rethought how you do things. Is, mate, back in the day, it actually is almost guaranteed that f0rest would have had essentially offers from like every team outside the top 10, you know, so like he would have just been in, like, I mean, he could have been again in an NIP or so. He could have been in loads of these teams and just like, you know, grinded it back up again. And I actually think the mistake was potentially thinking he can do a JKS, and it's like, right, because his problem is this, what he said in my interview and has said to himself now since, is what normally people say when they mean they're not going to come back. They go like, look, if it was the right offer and it was like a really like exciting project, normally when people say that, guys, it's just, they're just saying like, but obviously I'm not going to get that because I'm just like not as relevant or as good now. Like they mean, actually, I'm probably not coming back. I think what's weird is he said that, but really want to come back. Like I think actually he really did want to come back, but he thought if he waited somehow, I don't know what the context would be, how this would happen, but I think he did think there might be a moment where some like actual real top 10 team is like, hey, let's gamble on him, or, you know, give him 3 months or replace someone or something, but it never happened. So unfortunately, I think not only did he wait way too long, but I think that ship has actually sailed now. Like I think there's not a single chance. Like put it this way, even after seeing this interview, I don't think anyone is in these boardrooms mentioning his name when they come. Like when G2 does the discussion we had earlier of like, who could you bring in, or if I was to replace Imra and Na'Vi, they're not even putting f0rest's name on the board and then crossing it off. You know what I mean? Like he's not even going to get in the convo, unfortunately, which I do think is tragic, because here's the other reason why I wish he'd played. I can't know how good he is now. Yeah, he is one of the best players to ever play any esport game I've ever seen. If people don't know, I even agree with that thing he put in his Twitter bio, I don't know if it's still there, where he calls himself like a gaming genius. He actually is a genius at games. Like he's just like, his like raw, intuitive talent for the game is unbelievable. But his actual like performance level, obviously that's years removed. So in the modern day, you're never going to join as a star as well. That's another thing. Like that ship sailed. So the saddest thing is, if he'd have grinded, even if the team hadn't have been good, it could have shown me that he was still good, if you know what I mean. I'd be like, oh, right, hey, this is like a sleeper. But you don't forget this guy, just because he's 30, he would have been 34 then. If people don't know, it's also the reason he's 36 is it's only last month it was his birthday, apparently. So he's just become 36 now. But yeah, obviously, since he's up there, I have to know you're still good. Because the sad thing I would say is this. I even think the model for how you could have played and even could play now is there. It's just you're not even, like I say, you're not even on the stock market. No one's mentioning you. So it's not that your stock's low. You don't exist for people. You are out of sight, out of mind at this point in time. Because the saddest thing is, I actually think the pivot is obvious. If people don't know, this actually happened to a bunch of other famous players. I've often used this example, which is that in CS 1.6, once upon a time in f0rest's really old Fnatic team, the best players used to actually be f0rest as like the star rifler, DSN was the AWPer and was a very good AWPer back in the day, and Khan was the in-game leader, but he was actually a fragging in-game leader. He was like a pretty good player. And what they did is later at the end of 1.6, they gambled and made the super team where they got Get Right and they got Gox. These are like mega rifle players. And so what happened was Khan and DSM, even though by the way DSM was still an AWPer, essentially became like supportive elements or role players. Like they sort of took a step back, and everything in the game, they gave all the space and resources to the stars. And their logic, which actually turned out to be a very good move, by the way, was if we can learn these roles and do these roles properly, we're like OP support players, aren't we? Because we could also frag, and we used to be really good players. So what it would do in that team was, that was a team where the riflers would just kill you dead. But then every now and then your AWPer, who wasn't taking any resources, would just have halfway took over and scored. I would say the obvious CSGO example for people is Taz and Neo. They were the men in the old 1.6 teams. Like fucking Taz was like one of the best aggressive riflers, and Neo was just the best player. But in CSGO, I always thought what was genius about what they did is they humbled themselves. You can tell from day one they made that lineup with Bialy and Snacks. Like they knew it was a Snacks, Bialy, Pasha star team. They weren't the stars. And as a result, weren't they kind of OP? Taz was basically like an entry in an IGL who every now and then would pop off and just have like 25 kills and dominate the game and shit talk the opponent. You'll never get that in a random young entry player. And by the way, Neo, unironically, became like what one of the best supports in the world. Like, dude, he used to win clutches for fun in majors playoffs. Like, again, something like over the expectation for that sort of a role. So if f0rest wanted, by the way, I think he could even do the same actual spot in a team. He just can't have all the resources. If he just wanted to be one of the first 2 people into a site and do his job and be like a skilled player, not a best player, but just a player with some rifle skills, and he runs in on a Falcons type team or something, I think that could even work. I think as long as he didn't want to be the star, he didn't have to be f0rest like back in the day. I actually think this guy's a very healthy attitude. He's a very good teammate if people don't know. I do think, by the way, he follows tactics and what people say. I think he really could have fitted in one of these teams. Like, actually, the sad thing is, if he hadn't let his stock drop, why couldn't this conversation, like, why couldn't, for example, someone like a Liquid have taken him? You doesn't have to be the best player, just have to be a role player that you can rely on, right? So, and sad thing, and also, I'll just throw this out there. As much as people might meme like, yeah, but he's really old. It's like, bros, we're all just letting Fallen keep playing. You know, that still happens, right? You know, to this day, Fallen still plays and buys the fucking AWP and tries to shoot people with it. Like, that's, if he's allowed to play, why can't f0rest play, mate? f0rest is better than Fallen is. There you go. Is that an outrageous statement? I don't know that it is. It's, look, I will say it, sadly, it's sort of debatable at this point in time, but, you know, like, I don't think he's, and also he's not an AWP, I actually think he loses less resources. So the last thing I will say is this. The obvious angle, in my opinion, for f0rest, it's why I think he actually even said f0rest, by the way, guys, is when he said that, he didn't think, I'm frozen, make me the star. I think he was looking at Rain and thinking, bro, can't I do that? Like, isn't that me? I'm like a little bit over the hill. I've still got skills, though. I know all the game, and I can fit with veteran players. And also, the reason he's picking f0rest, guys, is he wants his Swedish CS. He wants to just play a bit loose and do some defaults and actually do some genius rounds himself, doesn't he? So the sad thing is this. I would conclude by saying the following. I think he could still play today. The problem is, I don't know if he wants to play for these teams, because it's going to have to be, I'm sorry, OG, Ents, maybe Fnatic, you know, it's just not going to be a top team is the problem. So if it really is, he only wants to come back to have like a chance to win a major, I think that ship sailed, I'm afraid. If you want to come back and it's more like, maybe I could make a major, hey, I'm actually in for that. You know what? If it's the right team, I would watch it. I mean, I would say to those teams I just mentioned there, another reason you might sign this guy is whether he's actually going to be good or not. It would give us like 50 more reasons to watch your team. Like, spoiler, the second Heavy God leaves OG, I won't be watching OG play. I don't give a fuck about any of those players, and they're not a relevant team. If you had f0rest, I might watch some. By the way, I'll definitely watch if he plays like an actual team that was like a rival of his or fucking some top squad. Why wouldn't I? The novelty alone would make me interested in a little bit.
Any age-related like situation always brings in views. So like with the Olympics like trial happening in the US, there's a bunch of like 16-year-old track runners that are bringing a lot of attention. So like you said, Thorin, like with f0rest being this old, that would make a lot of people watch his matches.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. I will say, though, he is an example, though. I forgot to say this earlier, so I'll do it now, actually. This is an example, though, of where I do get sick and tired of people doing devil's advocate arguments against me about it, like I always say. Because here's the thing. Do it if it's an interesting point. But people do this thing where they pretend it is their opinion. But then you find out it clearly isn't later. So here's the obvious example I was going to say earlier. Dude, how many shows have we done in this last year where someone sits there and defends Huxley's role in G2 like they were the fucking Secret Service man catching a bullet for the president? Like, get down, Mr. President! And they would come, like, dude, they'd have like blackboards with like a million reasons why and like some huge like equation of astrophysics as to why Huxley's the only guy who can remain. But then the second he's kicked, none of them are like, hey, come and join my team, or like, I hope he joins my favourite squad. Hey, I want him in Vitality instead of him. Suddenly that conversation isn't there, so you actually realise at the end, oh, you never believed this at all. So I'll say the same thing. Remember at the end of his time in NIP, no one cared about Dignitas. At the end of NIP, people used to famously say, f0rest has still got it. Like maybe he could even, you know, be like the 22nd best, maybe he's like even in contention to be a HLTV player if he had like a pop-off year. But I noticed those same people never then went to bat for him to be in all the good teams. Like you say, the second Dig became irrelevant and then he himself just became a streamer, all these people just fucking, they were just gone. The bar's empty. All of a sudden, all the people who wanted to buy him a shot in this metaphor before, they're not even there. It's just him fucking, him and just the fat chick at the end, who you can make the analogies to which team I was referring to before that might be. But I tell you what, f0rest, if you want to get laid tonight, that's your only option. So listen, the metaphor could go further, but we'll see.
I do think he had the line that was just like he wants to play in a major again, and I feel like
there you go. That's reasonable.
You could do that with a team like OG. You just have to pull your weight.
Of course.
Like you're not gonna be carried to it, but if you actually are contributing, you can do it. You know, they might need one more piece, but yeah.
No, I'm with you.
See more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or, be a pleb and don't.